So this is a reflection on a musical adventure that started when Paul Burwell and I first met in 1969. Quickly finding ourselves in close friendship and an intensity of musical discovery that was almost alarming. This is a reflection on his trajectory subsequently, including his work with Gamelan Ensemble, and on my trajectory subsequently, including what I'm doing here today. It's also a reflection on archives and memory, transience in live art, and the strength that lies in communities of practice.
That's what I felt. I started looking at this and trying to visualise this underwater ballet, which I don't think ever happened, did it? So this is in the imagination anyway. But because it reminded me of that time and just how I was at that time. And my instinct was, no, I can't cope with all that. Just I was happy, to look at this, but to try and kind of, I can't be in that time again.
No.
And all the memories are very incomplete. They're like little snatches, little images. Mostly to do with stage work, to do with actual performances. I think maybe the value of what that you asked me, but what's the value of looking at this? And I guess you and all of us who get involved. It's like trying to substantiate something that was important to us.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, I thought that didn't matter. I thought everything could be transient because people would always be creating more. So it seemed quite fine just to sort of create something for the day and be secure in the knowledge that next week somebody else would make something. Whereas I think when you get older, it seems rather different because you realise many wonderful things have just vanished. Which in some ways doesn't matter, but it also means they can't be shared with anyone other than those who are there. And I think it would be nice if some of those ideas could be shared.
Do you think you also lose the confidence that people will always be doing that?
Yes, I'm no longer so certain of that. Can you turn it off?
Yeah, sure.
We were talking last night at dinner, and Anne said an interesting thing. She said Gamelan Ensemble wasn't about transforming materials. It was about seeing what materials could do, what you could get out of materials. And this is what I continue to do. This is a conversation between myself and Paul Burwell, and we're discussing something that we came around to now and again, which seems still very relevant, which was this idea about producing a certain kind of performance which had elements within it that could be understood as destructive or self-destructive, and whether the destructiveness of the performance mapped onto the destructiveness of the person, or whether it was actually about energy and the excitement and the romance, if you like, of energy. And that was the key issue. And now I'm older. I think it's a bit of both, actually. History would point us in the direction of the first understanding of what's going on, but particularly in the case of Paul. But actually, the two things are very much a part of it. So I want to play you a bit of this conversation.
You and I, although we might work in art context, we've got some sort of musician sensibility. You know, in the sense of the way things are framed. That's what it is to have a game with Dora, is that they kind of tend to limit, as it were. Yeah. You know, it's not a sort of a 9 to 5 gig. And I think the other thing, you know, which is something I keep coming back to, only because it's an inevitable conclusion that people might draw who knew nothing about him or his work. And everybody tells me I'm no nonsense. But I still think that it has to be kind of really thought through to avoid people making that conclusion is because the work was so often dangerous and explosive.
This is a clear intervention.
Can I just interrupt you? Are you worried that the sound has gone?
Yeah.
Because I'm not using.
Okay.
I'm not using it.
Okay.
I'm using paper clips.
Okay. Good piece.
It was a nice, it was a nice drama. But you'd been replaced by paper clips.
Gaffer tape and paper.
There's a lot of people that sometimes have to go and self-produce because things have got a bit
Paul Burwell and I started playing together just after Christmas, 1969. We found ourselves wrestling with a new language of sound, listening, actions, objects, and space. At first it was music. We studied in the improvisation classes given by John Stevens at Ealing College in 1971-72. Also took classes in African music at London's Africa Centre and worked with as many musicians, poets, artists and dancers as we could. Bob Cobbing, Carlyle Reedy, Mitsutaka Ishii, Mari Yates, Hugh Davis. Both of us became fellows of the Royal Anthropological Institute to burrow into its claustrophobic library. We even thought about studying Kung Fu together. Most of the musicians we worked with lasted only 1 or 2 sessions, so we resigned ourselves to being a duo, called ourselves Rain in the Face after the 19th century Lakota war chief, and worked out an approach to free improvisation that expanded from simple structures and instrument combinations. Decomposition, we called it. By 1977, we had split up and come back together again. The simple structures had gone, replaced by what we called radical structure. Both of us were looking for ways around entertainment and the existing economy of music. As I wrote in my first book, Decomposition as Music Process, collaboratively published in 1972 by Paul's Merleton Publications imprint and Bob Cobbing's Writers' Forum, true musical space, see the uses of the word otherness, cold as a breath ocean, and melt away colourless and into the earth and utterly, the alchemical transformation of so-called music into landscape environment, the ecology of music as we know it, the collapse of the market gardener. We had worked intensively together in the early 1970s, searching for techniques through which to decondition ourselves from orthodoxies, devising exercises in listening and instrument building, studying esoteric organology, bioacoustics, environmental sound, raw musics, and anthropology. From bioacoustics, there were trumpeter swan and boo-boo shrike duets, gibbons and seals. From ethnomusicology, we made instruments based on kelp speaking voice tubes, used by the Pacific Northwest people in secret society rituals. Long flutes from Upper Xingu and Papua New Guinea, African buzzing merletons, and initiation whistles, and an Afro-Cuban string monochord called El Fua, the fear, a cord suspended from a tree branch connected to a resonating bamboo tube. The string sounded by friction, its pitch varied by pressure from the player's feet on the bamboo. We were both fascinated by phenomena like diffraction, propulsion, resonance, projection, masking, and heterodyning, and by shamanism, the symbolically grounded agency of shamanic drums, animal becoming, in noisy costume, the shaman's capacity to enliven quotidian space with the commotion of discarnate audible entities from the spirit world. In Paul's first 2 books, Paths into the Forest, 1973, he documented self-made instruments activated by non-musical reasoning, wind, rainfall, computer-generated variations, and what he called in whistlepiece, the odd sonic area of oculating upper frequencies produced on a large scale by many whistle players. At their core was a group playing bosun's calls, a reference to the naval training of his teens. What interested him was the creation of sounds that aren't played by anyone, but are a product of the relationships of the sum of the individual sounds produced, difference tones. This phantom music of non-human agencies and the behavior of sounds clustering, slithering, or violently ricocheting from within the mundanity of performance space became an obsession for both of us. In Rain in the Face, Paul was playing drums. I was playing electric guitar and flute. But by 1977, we had abandoned the name, electronics, and conventional drum kit, moving most devices down onto the floor. It was a bricolage of scattered, vibrant objects, a distributed conglomerate instrument. There was no longer any desire, in this duo at least, to play something called music. Paul's heroes, if they can be called that, included the 19th century engineer Isambard Kingdom Brunel and proto-Dadaist and literary provocateur Arthur Crevan, whose anarchistic actions included a 6-round boxing match with Jack Johnson that ended with Crevan knocked cold. Confusingly, Paul's second book, Subtle Sculpture, subtle spelt S-U-T-T-L-E, defines the word subtile, S-U-B-T-I-L-E, as under a web, not dense or gross, rather than making it clear that subtle, S-U-T-T-L-E, is an obsolete form of subtle, S-U-B-T-L-E. But his intention was consistent. The art of creating forms in 4 dimensions, revealing the nature of materials in sound, the visible aspects of which constitute the lesser part of the work. When I listen to archive recordings from a long ago Logos Foundation event in Brussels, I think of 2 things. One is a clear memory of Steve Lacey and Frederick Rzewski passing by as we played, pausing for a while, then moving on. And Gene Jenkins, ethnomusicologist, Appalachian banjo player, and curator of musical instruments at the Horniman Museum, making positive noises as we finished. Maybe her experiences of recording Ethiopian and Mongolian music helped. The second observation is that it sounds like phenomenology, intuitive physics, or a form of actionism, closer perhaps to the 19th century experiments of John Tyndall and Hermann Helmholtz, or to performance art aesthetics, than to music. Our mood was uncompromising, as is clear from a manifesto I wrote in 1976 called Monkey Confronts the White-Boned Demon. If fetishization of the sound object is to be avoided, which it surely must, if music is to shed its skin, then the technology must relate to the music as a poor music, to refer to and transpose Jerzy Grotowski's terminology. The music is the transient essence of a conglomerate of actions and processes which stem from the body, and are consistently reflexive with regard to the so-called performance as real-time confrontation with the situation of alien communication. Unsurprisingly, there was little appetite for it, either in the free improvising community or the wider context of experimental music, let alone the commercial music world. As the 1970s wore on, we pushed harder in our performances towards what Paul described as an altered, fluid perception of reality, drinking too much and often deliberately breaking our instruments as a way of bringing together the constitution of matter with the volatility and physicality of its effects. By 1980, our duo was over, lost to itself in the way that deep friendship can lose its bearings, survive only as raw and painful feeling. In search of greater intensities, Paul moved further into pyrotechnics with Stephen Cripps and the Gamelan Ensemble, Anne Bean and Richard Wilson. I diversified in other directions. Given the changes that have come about since, I feel we could work productively again, but Paul died in 2007. A death in circumstances maybe as inevitable and mysterious as that as Arthur Cravan. Imperfect as it is, at the very end something like radio frequency breaks into the tape of this concert from Brussels, so that the same music is heard as if from within another dimension. That recording is one of the very few that conveys anything of what we're about.